brace yourself for the literal terror I'm about to share with you. I don't even know if this is a place for a story like this, but I can't think of anywhere else to talk about it, and I just need to put it out there. I've told everyone under the sun about this. My family, my neighbors, my friends, random news outlets. It's never enough. I can't really explain it, but I feel some weird obligation to inform as many people as possible about what's been happening to me. So here goes. It's February of 2019 as I'm writing this. The story goes way back. I'm talking like 7 years plus. I can't tell you the exact year off the top of my head, but let's just say 2012. It might have been 2013, but that's my best guess. I was in my mid-20s with a stable job and boyfriend who is now my fiancé. I never went to college, so I had been in the workforce for a while, and it was unlikely that my life would ever experience any drastic change because of that. There was no reason for me to move far away from home, so I didn't. At that age, my boyfriend and I had just moved into my childhood home that my parents so graciously passed on to me as my first house. It's an extremely old brick house that my dad had actually inherited from his parents when he was around 40, so I'd be keeping it in the family. The house itself has seen a few rounds of renovations, but you can still tell it's old. It's the brick that gives it away. There are very few brick houses in our area, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. I kind of like that, though. It feels special. Speaking of our area, we live in a very woodsy neighborhood, so the houses are spaced far apart. Our house is also the last lot on our street, so instead of bordering the woods on just one side, we border it on two. The woods back there is massive, and I mean massive. As a kid, my brothers and I would often go exploring in there, but no amounts of aimless wandering ever got us even close to charting the whole thing. I'm sure some people would find that intimidating, but I've always enjoyed the wilderness, so it wasn't a big deal to me. Plus, I'm a girl who likes keeping to myself, always have, so being isolated in my own little corner of the earth was appealing. Anyway, my boyfriend and I had been living there for a few months when all this started happening. It was sometime in the winter. I can't remember the exact month, all I know is that there was snow on the ground. It was sometime after 8 in the morning on a Sunday, the one day a week I got to sleep in, as I was getting in my pickup truck to treat myself to a coffee like I do every Sunday morning, I noticed something odd. In the driveway right next to my car, there was what looked like a trail of footprints in the snow. My first thought was that my boyfriend had somehow woken up before me without me hearing him, and he came out to the driveway for whatever reason. But the more I looked around, the more I realized that was impossible. The path led across my front yard and through the hole in our side yard fence, meaning the footprints had originated from somewhere in the woods. On top of that, the trail didn't lead anywhere near our house, meaning they couldn't have been created by my boyfriend. I remember standing there confused as hell. The trail didn't lead around our house or up to any of the windows, just the driver's side door of my car. That meant someone had walked directly from the woods to my car, only to immediately turn around and walk straight back into the woods. It was bizarre. I ended up asking my boyfriend about it later that day, but he obviously wasn't responsible for it. I wish I could give you more details about that first instance, but it was so long ago that that's about as much as I remember. It must have been at least 2 winters after that when the next thing happens. I specifically remember it being 2015 because that was the year my Seahawks lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady. I woke up that morning and walked to my car. I think it was a weekday, but I'm not positive. As soon as I stepped outside, I instantly knew something was very, very wrong. There were footprints everywhere. I'm talking in the driveway, near all the windows, around the perimeter of the house. The yard was completely covered in them. I'm a pretty level-headed girl, so I'm not going to say I started panicking, but I'd be lying if I said I was completely calm in that moment. I was already late for work, so I didn't have time to inspect the prints very closely, but I didn't want to leave my boyfriend at a potentially dangerous situation. I quickly ran around the house and yard to make sure no one was lurking on the property, but that was about all I could do in the limited time I had. As I was pulling out of the driveway, I texted my boyfriend about the situation so he wouldn't freak out. I ended up leaving work early that day, mostly because the situation was stuck on my mind. By the time I got home, my boyfriend had made some shocking discoveries. As soon as I pulled up, he beckoned me into the yard and pointed at one of the trails, saying it had been bothering him all day. At first, I was confused, but then I realized what he was talking about. None of the footprints had left any shoe marks. I felt like an idiot for not picking up on it sooner. Whoever had left the footprints had been walking around in their bare feet. I was at a loss for words. Who the hell would walk around barefoot in freezing cold temperatures? My boyfriend suggested that maybe it was some kind of animal, but the prints genuinely looked like 2 human feet. We went inside and called my dad, but he said he'd never experienced anything like that in all of his years of living in that house. He told me to grab my rifle and tried tracking down whoever had left the footprints. I really didn't want to, but I knew this kind of thing was my responsibility. My boyfriend wanted to call the police, but I knew that would be a waste of time. We had no evidence that a crime was committed, and I didn't think trespassing would warrant a search. I told him I'd call the police if I found something in the woods. And he agreed. Like I said before, that woods is its own world, so I told myself. I turned back as soon as the sun started going down. I slung my rifle over my shoulder and headed out. I must have been following the trail for like 30 minutes when I noticed something really strange. Seemingly out of nowhere, the trail split into 2 diverging paths. I didn't know which one to follow. Hell, I didn't even know that was possible. I thought maybe whoever had left the trail had doubled back to confuse me. But then a scarier thought hit me. Was there more than one person out there? I was under the impression that I had been tracking one person this whole time. The possibility of multiple people had never even occurred to me. That was enough to shake me up, though I wasn't fully comfortable knowing I could be outnumbered out there. I stood there a little while longer before deciding to turn around. It was getting dark anyway. As I was walking back, I couldn't help but think about those footprints. I felt like I would have noticed if 2 people were trying to walk in the same footprints. There's no way the person in the back could have done it without messing up at least once. And then I thought that maybe someone had walked backwards from deeper in the woods to make it look like there had been 2 people there the whole time. And then obviously there was the possibility that it was just one person who doubled back on himself. Maybe someone had been carrying another person on his back and just got tired. I really didn't know which explanation was the most disturbing. He did end up calling the police that night, but as I predicted, they told us there wasn't much they could do without definitive evidence of a crime. I told my boyfriend I was going into the woods again the next morning, but it snowed pretty heavily that night, so there were no prints to follow anymore. My boyfriend was obviously terrified, but there was literally nothing we could do. Luckily, that was the last thing that happened that winter. In fact, nothing happened for a few years after that. I would go as far as to say we had forgotten about the whole thing. A lot had happened since then. My boyfriend and I got engaged in that time frame, and we were focusing on other things. I wouldn't be writing this if the story ended there, though. What I'm about to tell you happened less than a year ago. It was just after the new year, so January of this year. One random morning, I woke up to footprints all over my property. Just like that, all the memories came flooding back. My fiance actually broke down in our bedroom, asking me if we had ever escaped this nightmare. I didn't know what to tell him. It was actually worse this time. There were footprints leading to my shed, and a bunch of tools were missing. God knows what else those people had done. I was furious. I called up my friend Theo, explained the situation, and asked him if he'd help me. He's a big wilderness guy and a much more experienced hunter than I am, which is part of the reason I asked him for help. He agreed and drove over to my place a few hours later. My fiance was worried sick, but I promised him that Theo and I would be able to handle ourselves. We dressed for the cold and geared up, knowing we might be out there for hours. The reason I wasn't worried about the darkness this time around was because Theo had this really expensive thermal scope for his AR-10, which would allow us to see in low visibility. I never spent that much money on hunting equipment, so I'd still be blind, but it was definitely comforting knowing at least one of us would be able to see. I won't sugarcoat it. I was pretty scared by the time we headed out. At first, Theo and I talked as we walked, but after 45 minutes, we were mostly silent. It's like the seriousness of the situation hit us both at the same time. I remember praying to God that I hadn't dragged Theo into some horrible situation. I'm not sure how long we walked after that, but eventually the trail once again split into two sets of footprints. We followed the one on the left for a few minutes, but at one point, the trail just stopped abruptly. We retraced our steps back to the split, and Theo made a comment about whoever left the tracks really didn't want to be followed. I didn't want to think about it, so we just kept following the footprints in silence. I'm not kidding you. There were at least 3 other dead ends that forced us to retrace our steps, wasting valuable daylight. I remember thinking how remarkable it was that someone could walk backwards so perfectly that a trail of footprints didn't look like it had been stepped on multiple times. I'm telling you, it wasn't normal. The one upside, which Theo pointed out to me, was the dead ends likely meant we were tracking just one person. Eventually, it started getting dark. We were really deep in the woods at that point. I didn't recognize my surroundings at all. The trail footprints didn't diverge for a long time after that. Theo said whoever we were tracking had probably given up trying to make dead ends. Another 5 minutes or so passed, and the footprints started getting noticeably deeper. We were getting closer. At one point, another set of footprints appeared, right alongside the original. Theo cursed and whispered that he had been wrong and that we were probably tracking 2 people. The sun was basically all the way down now, so Theo was checking his scope every so often. The snow gave me some visibility, but I'll be honest, I probably would have turned around had it not been for Theo's scope. We were walking in complete silence. Out of nowhere, I felt Theo's arm reach against my neck, motioning me to stop. I looked at him, and he was looking straight ahead through his scope. I couldn't see what he was looking at, so I just kept looking at him. It looked like he was holding his breath. I had never seen him so still. After a good 20 seconds, he slowly made his way over to the nearest tree and crouched down. I followed suit, not even questioning why. Theo looked through his scope again, and I could see his hand began to tremble slightly. Another 20 seconds of complete silence. I was dying of suspense, so I lightly tapped his shoulder. He lowered his rifle and silently handed it to me. I looked through the scope and had to fight back a scream. There were 4 figures huddled in the snow. At first I thought they were bears, but I quickly realized they weren't. They were human beings. 2 of them were large and hunched over, and the other 2 were smaller. The smaller ones were clinging to a nearby tree, wildly jerking their heads around. They were eating something. I couldn't make out faces or details. Thermal scopes don't give you that, but I could see enough to know they were naked. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen with my own 2 eyes. Eventually, the larger ones picked up the smaller ones from off the tree and placed them on their shoulders. They then began walking deeper into the woods. Theo and I sat under that tree for what felt like an hour. We didn't dare move until we were positive that there was no way those things could hear us. By the time we got back to the house hours later, I was surprised to find my fiancé was still awake. He told me he couldn't sleep knowing I was out there and asked what we found. I told him in as minimal detail as possible, but he was still horrified. We called the police that night, who told us they'd search the woods the first thing the next morning. Theo agreed to stay the night so the 2 of us could assist the police in their search. The next morning, the police searched the woods with our help, but called it off after a few hours due to the partly covered-up footprints. My fiancé demanded that they keep searching, but they said they couldn't sanction a huge search over some missing tools. I don't blame them, but it didn't feel like closure. Theo and I knew what we saw. Winter's fast approaching, and both my fiance and I are worried those people are going to come back again. We're seriously considering moving, but haven't been able to get the ball rolling. That I really don't know what to think. Like I said earlier, I've told everyone I can about what's been happening to us. It's literally been going on for years. None of my neighbors have ever experienced anything like this, which doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why my house is getting targeted or what those people even want. Some of my friends think they're harmless, but other people tell me I'm in grave danger. I think I'm going to try and seal off my yard from the woods, but I don't know what else to do besides that. Hopefully, we can move out soon.